Well, good evening and welcome to the SpeakEasy. My name is Paul Feesey, and as always, I am joined by Nate Morgan Locke.
Hello.
Hello.
And with us, we have Glenn, the Christmas tree scrivener.
Yes, we are minus a Glenn today. I believe Glenn is isolating. Is that right?
I think he's awaiting a result.
Yes. So he's not feeling. He's been a bit under the weather, and so he's had his PCR. And so, unfortunately, like a lot of people, there's a potential that a lot of Christmas plans might have been thrown into chaos there. But we're kind of hoping that he's going to be okay. He should receive it by tomorrow sometime. But you're going to have to make do with us for now.
But isn't this fun? Because this is the first time. I'm not, it would be great for Glenn to be here, but it is the first time that just the two of us.
Make it
we
if we
can
try.
make it if we try. The
trying.
two of us are on the SpeakEasy together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is the first time, isn't it? Since because you came in September time. I wasn't here.
That's right. But it's in a weird way, I've always felt, and I'll be honest here, I'm going to draw in. I've always felt like I was slightly sitting in your seat, really, because I think of the live cast, so much of that, which I did watch. I was a fan before I was a member of the team. And I watching you and Glenn, you had this great thing going on, and I was like, oh, great, I get, And I thought, oh, but this is Paul's thing. This is
coming in.
So I've always felt like the SpeakEasy really is your show.
Oh, really?
And that it wasn't until you actually arrived on it that we got it where it ought to be.
Well, I will see. For me, coming back to it, I come back to it, and because before when I left, it was the live cast, and when I came back, it was the SpeakEasy. I've got no idea what's going on anymore.
All changed.
It's all changed. Not my show.
But now maybe there's a new era of Speak Live broadcasts.
Yeah, without Glenn. No, he's coming back.
He will come back.
We'll get him back. We feel that his material has been okay, so we're getting back in.
Yeah. But let's just talk about the thing you mentioned there, which is that a lot of people are feeling a bit anxious about the next few days because we don't know what might be announced. We don't know what results our lateral flow tests might produce, and so there's quite a bit of anxiety that the best laid plans are gonna gley, as the great Scottish poet Robbie Burns said. And the idea of plans not going well is something that's been a sort of a feature of the last couple of years. But your situation, particularly in the last 6 months, I think you've experienced that potential anxiety much more than most.
Yeah, I guess maybe to some extent. So for people who maybe aren't in the know, so my daughter Libby was very, very unwell this year and ended up in hospital, and it was very serious, and she almost died a couple of times, and we were in hospital for sort of 3 months. But there, we were thrown into a situation where you really can't plan anything. There's no point thinking, hey, 2 weeks from now, or even a week from now, let's, the kids will come up and we'll do this on the weekend and they can come in, etc. Because stuff could just change every day and you never knew what was around the corner. And so that was, that's obviously quite a, exhausting thing to deal with. But then actually when I came home, Libby was still in hospital, but I was back home. I remember kind of thinking to myself, well, this position we're in where we don't know what tomorrow will bring. In one sense, it's really no different to what anyone else is going through. And I don't just mean because of COVID, although that does bring it up for people that with COVID, we weren't sure what was going to happen tomorrow. But it's reality for everyone. It's just we were more aware of it all of a sudden. And I remember a lady from church saying that, I'd been thinking about it, and then she said to me, kind of vocalized it, she said, oh, you're really going through, we're all going through the same thing as you really. You just are aware of it more. And I thought, that's exactly what I've been thinking. That none of us knows what tomorrow brings. We, and even that was true before COVID. And we would have kind of said, wouldn't we, that where are you going in the summer? I've booked my holiday. We're going to Spain. And you might be saying that kind of 6 months in advance. We are going to Spain for our holidays. But the reality is none of us knew that was actually ever going to happen. We just assumed it would. But you know, you can wake up in the morning and suddenly, I don't feel very well. What's that? Go to the doctors and you get some kind of horrible news, or you have some terrible accident. Actually, the situation we're in now, you know, as we come up to Christmas, where people are feeling anxious about we don't know what's coming tomorrow, is really the situation we've all been living in for our entire lives. But COVID has just brought that to the fore, I suppose, in a way that we weren't aware of before.
And that lack of awareness is a slightly, you're slightly living in a fantasy where you can decide what you'll do tomorrow and what you'll do next week and what you'll do next month and next year. And in a way, the shaking that's happened through COVID and through personal circumstances that people might have had is actually quite a healthy thing, because it means that you've got to trust. You can't just plan and say, this is what we will do. I mean, there's a time and a place for trying to plan things out.
Yeah.
But that God being in charge means you can enter the unknown with confidence that he's going to be with you. But so we're thinking, about the next few days and obviously thinking about next year. But we thought that this evening we'll retreat into the known.
Yeah, absolutely.
We won't try to predict what's going to happen or plan. We're going to spend some time reviewing what has happened. And it's going to be quite fun because neither of us were around for a lot of the ministry of Speak Life during 2021.
That is very true. It's, the year in review, as that is what we are doing.
Yeah.
Will be interesting given that none of us were here for quite a bit.
Yes, this really was one that Glenn ought to have been present for. Yeah.
So, I think because our tech team today, actually, we've got them. They're going to be a little bit more vocal today, I think.
Let's hope
tech
so.
Team, do you want to say hi?
Quick hellos.
Hi, I'm Micah.
Hi, I'm Thomas.
G'day, I'm Max.
There we go. So we've got a couple of our interns, and one intern, and then we've got Thomas and Max here as well, doing some bits for us. So they may chip in as well on this, but they're going to kind of cue us up with a few bits that have gone on this year.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing you've got for us this year? What's the first highlight?
Yeah, well, we thought we'd kick us off with the Reset series, and we've got a picture of the Andrew Peterson one there, but that was a big project. You were there before I was, Max. How was it?
Yeah, Reset started out as something and then it kept expanding, actually. So I think it started, it was almost before the start of the year, actually, I think. December last year. So, yeah, I started the first half, but then you picked it up when I went home for a few months. So, yeah.
Is it really, I mean, I knew it had started back last year, the series. Was it actually before you came, Thomas?
Yeah.
Goodness me, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So Reset began sort of in the latter half of last year. So if you watch last year's review, you'll see us talking about that as the freshest piece of media that's gone out.
Breaking news.
Reset. Whereas now, it feels like such a long time ago, but it was still going on into the new year. And the idea behind Reset was mostly based in sort of Genesis 1 to 3, and kind of looking at how are these texts actually foundational for us today, and do they speak to us in some way? So Glenn spoke to all kinds of different people at the time. I think initially there was supposed to be about 15 people, but it gradually grew and grew. There was, I think near the end, particularly this year's segment, there were a lot of faces who perhaps weren't on the original list.
They were just accepting anyone in
at that point.
2021, just
anyone would do.
Come talk about it. Yeah.
So we had people like Douglas Murray and Catherine Burble Singh, and then we had Andrew Peterson this year. Jonathan Pageau, I think, was quite a big name. I think he did a couple in the end with Glenn.
And that is all about the meaning crisis and the sense in which big ideas are being discussed online, particularly on YouTube and things like that, where people are watching long form content, diving deep into big, profound questions of life and meaning and everything. And I think actually that is a significant part of what we want to do at Speak Life, is to speak life into that conversation.
Yeah.
And to say that we don't have to retreat into philosophical or political responses to the questions, but to say that in Christ we have genuine meaning and value, and not most of the people who were interviewed on those things would not be professing Christians either.
No,
so,
some of them were,
yeah.
but yeah, there was a
Yeah.
really good mixture of
Yeah.
kind of Christians and people who wouldn't call themselves a Christian, but all with kind of valuable things to say.
Yeah.
And I think we just said a moment ago, didn't we, about how the uncertainty of kind of COVID has brought to light for people that the uncertainty of life. I think the Reset series were kind of picking up on that kind of through late 2020 into the beginning of this year. Because COVID did for a lot of people make them kind of go, what's going on? The foundations of my life have been ripped out. I thought that, my job was secure. I thought that, my health was secure. And suddenly life wasn't like that anymore. And so people were kind of asking questions. And I think the Reset series was a way of trying to, react to that. As it wasn't purely reactive, but I think it was certainly wanting to try and answer those questions where it felt like there was a hunger, at least, during that season. I don't know whether there's still that hunger. I don't know whether we've got a bit kind of...
Have we got jaded?
COVID
I think
burnout.
it's still there. I think there is still a significant number of people who are wanting to engage with those sorts of questions online. And I think the ministry we may or may not be doing next year will try to engage with that in significant ways. But yeah, certainly the Andrew Peterson interview, which was a fantastic one on the idea of world building and creating stories and music and art, was very interesting. There was a particular part of that which Glenn's referred to a couple of times, in which Andrew Peterson talked about a great show that they were doing, which was called Behold the Lamb, something.
Oh, okay,
like
yeah.
that. And
I think that rings a bell.
Sorry, but and it ends with this singing of the doxology as the band sort of slowly retreat off the stage after this musical concert. And yes, just a very funny part of that conversation that you can watch is where Andrew Peterson shares what a particular minister wanted to do after this glorious and poetic and profound ending by coming up on stage and giving a talk. But you should watch that video to find out.
Yeah,
exactly
and we're going to put links to all these things actually we talk about, aren't we? So
definitely.
we'll put them in the video description afterwards. So if you're kind of thinking, oh, that sounds interesting, but how do I find it? Just check out the description. You'll be able to get there. So yeah.
So the year was kicked off with Reset.
Yep.
Which is a great way to kick off a year, to set again.
Yep.
But I think the most people were actually watching a video of a town council meeting at the first part of the year.
Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
You have no authority here.
Which council was that? I can't remember now. I don't know.
Somewhere up north, wasn't
Someone's screaming at the screen right now, aren't they?
it? Oh, it's
Handforth
Parish
Thank
Council.
you. Yes.
That feels like a very long time ago.
It
So
does.
what was after that? What was the next?
Must be
what's the
something
next
else.
part of the year as it unfolds? What have we got?
Oh, cancel Valentine's.
Look
Yes.
at them.
So, this is obviously for Valentine's Day, this one came out. So another one of our sort of seasonal video. That's our kind of big thing, isn't it? Seasonal videos is the big thing we do. So Valentine's Day was the one this year, or one of the ones this year. And so you had this kind of Zoom conversation between these two characters, the boy and the girl, the man and the woman, where I guess they were... It's like a first date kind of thing, was it?
Yeah.
Trying out their lines on each other, but all done in kind of rhyming,
Yes.
like a spoken word rhyming thing.
Largely to do with smelly bowels, I think.
There was
the
definitely
main
some mention
sort
of
of
bowels.
issue.
Yeah, swelling entrails.
But yeah, and the great thing with the seasonal videos is obviously, we're hoping that they will have, added value through the years that you can sort of pick them up and set them down. But looking at the messages of the true Valentine's Day and how that romance might relate to the gospel. But yes, Cameron and Anna did an absolutely standout job, which I should say, relative to, they were good in their own right, but specifically relative to the version of it that Glenn did by himself, which may not see the light of the internet, but
How much
was
money have you
very,
got, Glenn?
very funny when he sent it through as a proof of concept, and I loved it. So You should request that online somehow. Maybe a DM.
Pledge your money now.
That's it. Yeah,
well, it's a fundraiser.
That's
we
the
will
money
release
behind
the, video.
the paywall. That's what's there.
Yeah.
But yes, so seasonal videos, and then obviously these deeper kind of meaning crisis questions with Reset, and then what came up in 2021 was Ravi Zacharias is Amnon, who are you? So this was the story of Ravi Zacharias's consistent and persistent abuse, and then the cover-up of that abuse. And Glenn did basically a recorded sermon about that and about the nature of abuse, and just how deep-rooted it is and how complicated it is, and how so many of our responses to it fall drastically and tragically short of the gospel. And in a strange way, because I think if we got links to the other thumbnails in there, that led to really a huge number of interviews and conversations that Speak Life was a part of. So you see there Lorianne Thompson in her own words, and interestingly, these were the videos which got the greatest number of views.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was? I mean, what do you think? In one sense, maybe it's obvious, but
yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, it was such a big thing in itself. I mean, it kind of reverberated very far, didn't it, because of who Ravi Zacharias was? But I think as well because it wasn't only the Ravi stuff that was kind of coming out. We also had, I mean, stuff that had been kind of, I think, had been boiling for a little while. So just touching the tree there. Sort of been simmering away. Some of the Jonathan Fletcher stuff had kind of already, I think it had already come out, but there was more coming out about it. I think there was stuff with, was it Steve Timmis? Is it Crowded House? And I think it suddenly opened the floodgates a bit for people to stand up and kind of say, you know what, it's not just Ravi.
Yeah,
there are lots of other people where this is going on, and that was one of the part of Glenn's video response was to the kind of the attitude that might say, oh, there's just a couple of bad apples here or over there, like Ravi was a bad apple, or Jonathan Fletcher was a bad apple. Yeah, and I think it, as he kind of said, it takes a whole church to almost allow that kind of abuse to go on, and I think what it forced us to do was to just reflect on on ourselves individually, but also our churches and our ministries. Because, I mean, the Ravi thing, I think, maybe for us in our circles wasn't as immediate, but the Jonathan Fletcher stuff was maybe more immediate because of the kind of circle some of us move in. And even if you weren't involved in the Jonathan Fletcher stuff, because of the kind of influence he'd had, and a lot of people knew him and had been worked with him, trained with him, things had kind of trickled down into ministry that you wouldn't even, it's not people being malicious, but maybe were unhelpful. I think we talked in one of the things earlier in the year about, the kind of attitude of like so-and-so sound, men to watch, that kind of thing. Right, okay. So very exclusionary of certain people and damning of others. We're the chosen few. We're the ones who know what we're doing, the right ones. And how that's led to kind of basically abuse in the church. And so I think it really struck a nerve for people who went, yeah, actually, I've seen this all the time. And any time I've tried to say anything about it, I've been silenced or pushed to the side. And that's why it spawned so many videos and content, I think. I think it's caused us all to do a lot, like I say, a lot of reassessing. And I don't know about how you've experienced it, because I know you were kind of overseas for quite a lot of it. I don't know if the Ravi thing was more immediate over there in the American setting, but
I mean, I didn't think that was really personally. I was not. I was aware that there was a guy called Ravi Zacharias, and that he did a lot of intellectual sparring and defense of the gospel, on a big scale, and was very popular. I'd only ever watched one video, I think, in my whole life of Ravi Zacharias, and he was answering a question in a Q&A, obviously off the back of some lecture,
talk he'd given,
talk, apologetics talk he'd given, and I just think I especially, I wasn't especially taken with it. I didn't think it. He was someone that I thought, oh wow, I really want to watch more of this. But obviously, he had a global ministry, in a ministry which bore his name, Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, which lots of people, lots of apologists and evangelists, not only from the US but from this country as well, were involved in. And so there really was a considerable edifice around him, which there was a major concern that he could fall, but how could the rest of that fall too? And what's the relationship between the individual and the ministry or the culture? And you mentioned other abuses of power in the UK church, which have similarities, but obviously differences as well. And I suppose the question that it really comes down to is how deep does this go, and how much needs to be addressed? How fundamental is this culture of abuse of power to the theology that's being presented? What is the relationship between those two things? And there will be a tendency to want to say, well, what's the minimum we sort of need to do to address this? How can we move as quickly through this to get back to what we really want to focus on? And how much do we need to say, no, this has got to go right down to the roots? And in a sense, it's a good thing for it to fall, because then something else, something better, something much more faithful to the gospel can rise up in its place. And various people have various different opinions about the depth of that. But I think it's still an unfolding situation. So it's been interesting to see. So Sam Albury, who was interviewed by Glenn a couple of times over the last 12 months, how their conversations, I think, are still ongoing about what does it look like, and again, to just reflect personally, coming back to the UK, having been out for a few years, and coming back into a constituency that felt sort of slightly in shock and as though there was still more to come out. I thought, well, there is a reshaping of the landscape of the church in the UK that's going to take place. And what is it that's going to order that? What is it that's going to reconfigure the landscape into something that better reflects who Christ is? So I think I don't in any way want to sound opportunistic, because of course there is real trauma and real sin and all sorts of genuine pain and shock and anxiety that is still there. And it's not the time to say, and so we're going to launch this brand new thing, boom, boom, boom. But to say, when God is shaking the world, whether he's shaking it through pandemics or through scandal, that is a place in which the church will ultimately thrive. And whilst the particulars of what it's going to look like are still very much unknown, I think there can be real hope there that this is not the end, and that's a good thing. Whether you're sure that it needs to go much deeper, or you're convinced that some people are manipulating the situation for their own ends. So whatever that conversation is, I think I'm ultimately hopeful that it will result in something much more. A balm. There is a balm of the gospel that will be retrieved. And I think Diane Langberg was one of those who Glenn interviewed, and just her work in terms of helping people think through the power that they have and how they use it and how they use it in a Christ-like way rather than following the sort of pattern of the world. Really.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think there is this ongoing kind of reshaping or still, in some sense, still trying to make sense of certain things. I suppose some people are obviously. Some will be more resistant. Some are very much up for a complete reshaping. And I think, like you say, because someone like Dan Lamberg has helpfully shown that sometimes you don't even realise the power you have and how you might misuse it. And I think, my assumption would be, although I might be wrong, is that there are not lots and lots of people who are deliberately trying to misuse power, but sometimes. But people can without even realizing the power they have, or at least I would hope that seems a better scenario than there are lots of people who are deliberately doing this in the church. Yeah. But I think that's painful for a lot of people. I mean, I think a lot of the resistance to some of these discussions and people kind of saying, "Well, can't we just move on now?" and things is because it does make us look at ourselves and think about our own lives and think, "Well, what about my ministry and what have I gleaned from?" What might have trickled down into me that I'm doing and haven't even realized doing, and maybe am I part of the problem? Just like the Amnon thing, is it me? And I think in some sense the answer is probably yes, we are, and that's quite tough. So I think that's going to be a long process. But like you, I think that good can come from it. And that's not at all to dismiss the trauma and to say, oh, that's just going to go away and it'll all be rosy. But we trust in a God who, brings light out of darkness and all those things. So,
and I think one of the other things from my point of view, having made a few sort of documentary shorts and then being involved in making a feature-length documentary about the founder of the seminary that I have been at, was that I think there's something profoundly Christian about journalism, which is that journalism, the journalistic hero is one who goes out and reveals the truth and shines a light on places where others would prefer it not to be shone. I forgot the right verb ending now, I don't know, but anyway, they don't want the light to be shone there. They would prefer you to cover it up, and there is a courage and a bravery that needs to be present if someone's going to actually find out the truth. And I think when we look at something like, have you seen the film Spotlight, which was about it was basically about the Boston Globe, group of journalists who uncovered a set of scandals within the Roman Catholic Church, and you really do see, like, journalism, which has such a bad rep because we're all thinking, oh, we're being manipulated at any given point. There's something about investigative journalism which is properly Christ-like because it goes into dark places and reveals them for what they are. So I do think I think there's much more to be done in that area, and I think it'll be interesting to see where things go. But as we've said before, ultimately, hopeful that things will reflect the character of the God we worship much more coherently.
Yeah. Shall we think about the next one then? Shall we move on from there? So what have we got next? Seeing the Future, episode 1. So I think this was a
You think this
I think this was. So this was I was going to say, I think it's a 5-part series. I'm pretty sure there were 5 parts, which were based around the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus.
Okay.
If I'm right off the top of my head. So there. So although, if I'm honest, the one thing that really stands out to me from this is I think it's episode 1. Glenn does the entire thing in the car, driving round.
Right.
And I just remember a number of people getting very, full of anxiety about the fact that he was talking to the camera whilst driving the car. So that was my big takeaway from seeing the future.
It's worse if you're actually in the car with him.
I have been in the car with Glenn. It is terrifying.
No, he's a very good driver, and he's given me lots of lifts. But you guys, who was around from the tech crew?
I was there actually.
Yeah.
Did you do some very early morning filming for things? And
we
stuff
did.
Like that?
So episode 5 takes place on the beach, and we filmed it we got up about 4 to film it, and we did an actual barbecue on the beach because it's about the bit where Jesus appears to the disciples. And so we were barbecuing our kippers at 6 in the morning, which is a strong flavour to have at that time. But it was a great series to be involved in. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a series which obviously is on the YouTube channel, and you can use for the, I'm assuming there will still be Easter. They can't
cancel Easter, can they? Who knows? We'll have to see.
Who knows? But it is about seeing the future, which is interesting because that's what we talked about. And so seeing the future as it, we see it in that those first fruits of Christ, who is the first fruits from among the dead. And so our destiny, if we're in him, is to join.
It's like a little glimpse of the new creation.
Yeah.
There in historical time that was happening. Yeah.
So so that was filmed Easter time, or just coming up to Easter time.
I think so.
And what did the year? I've still not joined.
You're still not even joined. I'm just about hanging on at this stage. I think got about another month, and then I'm out of here. So.
Okay. Okay. So what was next?
Best dad. I'm out.
Best
That's
dad.
Me gone.
Is that when you left?
Me gone.
Okay.
So this was Father's Day.
Yeah.
And I know I wasn't there because I was in the hospital for Father's Day. It was literally about a week. I think it was the first Sunday I was in the hospital, actually. This was a little 3 minute little video that Glenn had devised, where he had this character who played a dad, and the son keeps coming up to him. He's sitting on the sofa and he wants him to kind of play with him, and the dad's kind of like, in a minute, he's on his phone, and he's gradually, as he says, in a minute, he's getting sucked down into the sofa, until eventually he's sucked right into the sofa
and enters inside a sofa world.
Inside the sofa of the world, and who should he find in there but his own dad?
His own father.
Who's still watching the telly, and has been for the last 30 years or whatever he thinks.
And that, given the experience inside that sofa, he has an epiphany. He has a discovery of what the future could be, and so he resolves to put down his phone to stop his own screen time, that he might re-enter the real world and go and join his son, and put on the Best Dad cap. I should go and get the Best Dad cap. I should have been wearing.
It's still knocking around. Is it? Still knocking
currently
around.
Wearing my American UK cap.
I think Mike is about to go grab it. So we've got a live prop.
Go grab it. I'll wear it. We'll wear it.
This was quite a fun one to shoot as well. This was all on tables. We put a couch on tables. Probably not the safest way to do it.
Yeah.
It was all pretty much made up the morning of. All on tables. A table on a table. The actors standing on tables. Just so that the couch could have a hole in it, in which the lead could sink down under.
Didn't he have fake legs as well?
Yeah,
Did he have some fake legs in
fake
order
trousers.
Yeah. So it's kind of a Rod Hull and emu thing going on, kind of. Yeah.
Right, and I'm just going to put this Best Dad cap.
And now modelling the Best Dad cap.
It's very cool. One of the things that's so great about working here is that because we make props and we make these sorts of things, so that's the sound of me just adjusting the size on the cap.
People on the podcast,
Yeah.
We've actually got you on screen. There's a cutaway there.
Cool.
Here we go.
Stick that one on. Is that you do get to look at that? I get to be Best Dad. With my beard at the moment, I do actually look like I'm some sort of fisherman or something. Oh, look at that! I'm just going around of applause. Yeah, but so that's one of the things that's so brilliant, is having production design and having stuff that you can make and then hold and touch, and it's not just a video. It's real. It's not just pixels. It's real. But yeah, that was a great, fun little video, and that was. So who was shooting that, Max? That was you. Were
Yeah, so I shot
DP?
that, and Thomas was around. I think neither of you guys were here at the time, were you?
Not at all.
It was
So
very much in product. You were just kind of getting on with getting the sofa and stuff like that
Right.
just before I left.
No, it was a fun one to shoot. I think it was a couple days after I landed. I remember I got the brief the day beforehand, actually, so it was quite a scramble. And Thomas and I did a one-day turnaround with post, so it was quite an adventure. But it came
cool.
out all right. Yeah, directed by Glenn, of course featuring Ben Bissett because he's in every film we make. But yeah,
He's going to appear later on in this rundown of the year as well, I think. Yeah. So after Best Dad, when is Father's Day?
I think it was June.
June.
I'm going to say it must have been
something.
June.
Okay. Sometime
Late
in June.
You can still. I mean, you can. It's different in America, though, isn't it? Do they have different days, or is just Mother's Day that's different? Do they have Father's Day in America?
is there a Father's Day in America?
Yes.
Micah should know.
Yes.
You know when it is? I can't
Absolutely.
remember.
And
It
the
is.
date is.
The date is November. No, that's my dad's birthday. It's November 3rd. There is Father's
Yeah.
Day, but I
Yeah.
can never remember the date of Father's
Okay.
or Mother's
Fine.
Day. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
different in New Zealand as well. I remember thinking, "Oh my goodness, I forgot about Father's Day," but it was just an
But
entirely
it's
different
also
day.
totally weird because Mother's Day is actually Mothering Sunday. So that's
Right.
like a church calendar thing.
Yeah, but do you have?
And I
Fathering
don't think
Sunday?
there is a Fathering Sunday. That sounds much more like something a bit
Bit strange.
really want to talk about.
Yeah, Fathering
There we go.
Sunday.
Right, let's move on. Let's move on.
And
What's
next?
next?
Oh, the power of stories. So, our
This
very own Nate
refers.
Morgan Locke.
This is a symbol of me obviously. It's a picture of me talking
a
about
symbol of you. A
a
symbol,
symbol.
for Nate.
a representation of my face with a lot less hair on my chin.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, when I was full of optimism and hope before
Coming.
ministry ground me down again.
Mm.
But no, this is, I think, supposed to recall the fact that over the summer we did a number of interviews.
Right.
So I was, Glenn did a sort of entry interview with me. We talked about being a reformed mythologist and the power of
Yes.
story and the imagination and all that sort of stuff, which we've explored at some depth in the intensives and through the Foundry Unlocked, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, summertime, interview time.
Yeah.
Let's just chat to a bunch of people
Yeah.
about some more interesting things.
Yeah, and there were a
Yeah.
whole load of things. And again, I mean, having not been here, I did keep up with some of them
Yeah.
because I had a bit of time on my hands in the hospital. So, I mean, the one that really stood out for me was Glenn's interview with Rebecca Mclaughlin, who I
Okay.
think did a reset as well, possibly, maybe last year. I might be wrong. Or she did something. Maybe she was just talking about her book. Because she had a book, Confronting Christianity,
Right.
which was excellent. But then when Glenn interviewed her in the summer, it was just one of the, sometimes you listen to an interview and you just think, oh, there's just every bit. You kind of, there's such good stuff here, just
Yeah,
good stuff after good stuff. And I just, every time, I hear Rebecca kind of speak, I just think to myself, wow, I wish I could play this to my non-Christian friends, because she just keeps
Yeah.
putting she keeps just putting her finger on so many things in the society and
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things she talked about was just the big thing to do with kind of if you're kind of more on the progressive side of things, who will often claim to be looking out for those who are perhaps oppressed and vulnerable.
Right.
But yet all the stats show that those who are perhaps in those more minority groups hold very opposing views to those kind of progressive left people who are
Right.
trying to do that.
Okay.
And she just time and time again just shows how so often what the world thinks about things like that, but also just about the church and Christianity is just completely crazy
Yeah.
and not at all founded on reality. And it's strange that in a sense, I find it strange that I like her stuff so much because in some ways she's quite an apologist. She's much
Right.
more apologetics. And I'm not a massive fan of apologetics in the
Right.
sense of like, here's a talk on, the cosmological argument, that kind
Right.
of stuff. for me, I'd rather like, here's a Bible passage that's preach Jesus. But she's just got a way of bringing Jesus into it so naturally, which perhaps in some other areas isn't quite the case. It can be a bit more philosophical and just, here's a debate. So if you get a chance to check out the Rebecca Mclaughlin, I can't even say her name, Rebecca Mclaughlin interview.
Yeah,
it is.
It's a
well
good job
worth
you
seeing.
weren't interviewing.
I know.
Could
Yeah. Hello.
have been awkward.
Rebecca.
Yeah, so in that series as well, I think that probably covers the conversation that Glenn and I had with Liam Thatcher talking
Is that
about
Mars Hill?
the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast.
Yep. That was.
which
Yep.
he'd
I remember
done
listening.
I was in a very irascible mood during that
Do you
conversation.
feel that did you feel that perhaps some of the things you said made people angry?
Probably. I think I gave a sort of full throttle kind of indictment of the Twitter sphere or something. That was probably what I got into.
And that was like week one of your.
Yeah, I was sort of
This
really
is Nate.
started with a bang.
And then-
He doesn't play well with others, but yeah, here he is. But that was an interesting one because, of course, that Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast from Christianity Today, and I forget the name, Mike Cosper, was that the guy who's the director or editor of that podcast? Again, that was looking at that theme, or the tale of Mark Driscoll and all the things that happened with him in Seattle, and has multiple points of connection with the sorts of stuff that Glenn had been talking about with regard to Ravi Zacharias, and they come out with the Jonathan Fletcher and the John Smythe conversations as well. And the place of journalism within that, and of course that conversation also touches on the social media age and the idea of releasing things week by week and generating a conversation around what's being done. So yeah, if you can cope with me being a bit, I don't think I was snarky. I don't think snark is right. I just sort of,
I thought you were absolutely reasonable at sitting in the hospital listening to you decrying Twitter.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm with
Glenn
Nate on
was
this.
going, no, there's hope. It kind of works.
I think my favourite moment was when you said something about how Twitter was just filled with all this kind of vile stuff and horrible stuff, and then you said to Glenn, "And I only follow you."
It's mainly just his tweets that I was trying to address.
It was just quite funny, Nate. Sorry to jump in, but it was
feel free to jump in.
Thomas. Thomas, if you need to say something,
Yeah, we'll be quiet.
the irony was you were having this conversation over social media.
Yes.
So it was just quite funny. Yeah, I don't know how you reconciled that. But,
I didn't reconcile it. I lived with the tension.
An Alanis Morissette level of irony right there.
Yeah, I suppose there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were, and there we are. Inconsistency all the way down. That's me.
So that was summertime. No, that was after summer. No, that
It
was
sort of
part
coming
summer,
into
into September time.
Yeah,
Because you
there's
started September, is that right? End of August.
I think
September?
I was supposed to start in August, but maybe
Just didn't turn up.
Yeah, just didn't turn up. And then when I did, just had a big row.
Just big rant about
Big rant.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, they need to hear it. Someone's got to tell them.
Someone has. But then
This was a bit more uplifting.
this was a bit more cheerful, Mr. Thankful.
Mr. Thankful. Tell us about Mr. Thankful then, because this was your brainchild. Is that right?
It was. Well, it came from a series of conversations because we wanting to release these seasonal videos and something that grabs hold of it. And Harvest is in lots of ways a real missed opportunity evangelistically.
Okay.
And so there's this kind of idea of these sort of church services on Harvest Sunday, and maybe some people turn up with some
Tin of beans,
some tinned goods and a loaf of bread, and yet we don't really sort of press into it to say, well, what is a Christian approach to Harvest, and what is a Christian understanding of this amazing thing that keeps happening, where you put some small little things on the ground, and then a few months later they grow up into plants and you can eat them. And so there's something about that which essentially demands explanation. And there's a multiple different ways that various cultures. Oh, look at this! We've got another one. Here we go. Thank you, Mike. So, come on, Mike. Come put your face.
We weren't
in.
even in shot then.
He's not even.
Get
He's
in the
supposed to have
shot.
finished last week.
No, he's still not in shot.
He's
Come down
still
here.
not in
Get
shot.
right close to him. Get right next to his face.
Volunteer
Get
internship or just to volunteer.
Just
with
get-
Just here.
Just get
here.
cozy.
He's still not in
Look
shot.
at that, you're not in
Smile.
shot. Look, you look.
I'm gonna
Just
put that
look,
there.
come down.
Put your
Come down.
face there. There's Micah. He's just brought this. Thank you, Micah. So yeah, we got Katie to who's another of our interns. She made us Harvest Cheer cereal, and look at that. We're sort of
So this-
accumulating
yeah, just
all the
random
gifts. It's cool.
props.
But anyway, so what I was saying was that harvest time and the amazing process of plants is something that, whatever your worldview, you need to have some explanatory myth, or you need to have some explanation for it. And so I'd been looking at the story of Ceres and Demeter and Persephone and Hades, and there's all these kind of Greek myths and Roman myths about the reason for the season when it comes to harvest.
Yep.
And then there is this kind of, purely kind of materialist view, which just sees these as biological processes which have no meaning or value or significance whatsoever, but they just happen. And we wanted to spend some time exploring what the Christian, how the gospel gives an account for harvest time. And so we had loads of conversation around that, and had some really fun times. And we thought, well, actually, there's something really celebratory from a Christian point of view about rejoicing in the first fruits of the harvest. So we've already talked about Christ as the first fruits from among the dead.
Yeah.
But celebrating the fact that a seed goes down into the ground and dies and produces many seeds. And they're not just celebrating that, but wanting to communicate the joy of it. And wanting to say there's something so wonderful and positive and uplifting and affecting about this whole process. And the idea of Thanksgiving and saying, grace before meals is to live your life as a very thankful person. And so then we just thought, well, let's do 24 hours in a day in the life of the world's most thankful man, Mr. Thankful. And so, we filmed that back in, I don't know when that was. Was it the end of August, Max? You were DP on that?
Yeah. Was it end of August? Was it September?
It was September.
I think it might have been
Start of
September.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
We did it. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
it the week prior to the internship.
Yeah. And just so much fun. And and then we sort of promoted it again in time for the Americans celebrating Thanksgiving in November.
Of course.
A happy
Yeah.
a happy accident that happened on this one, I think, it was half intentional but half just landed in our laps, was the amount of yellow that came on screen. And actually just did a wee breakdown of all like key moments in the film as a collage of frames, and it was quite cool to see how much yellow. But I think we wanted a yellow tie, but then it turned out his backpack was yellow. And
Yes, and he was wearing tan-coloured trousers
Right.
as well. Chinos.
And it just, yellow's a happy colour.
It just came across really cheerful, and we've picked a reggae soundtrack.
Yep.
Because that's uplifting and positive, and so I think it was a really nice, a nice sort of initial short film, seasonal film to work on for me being here. And
And this was your first of Speak Life, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And really nice to have, like you say, with Harvest sometimes being a bit of a mist. I mean, I'll be honest, sometimes when Harvest rolls around at church, I kind of get to the Harvest service and I just kind of think, oh no, it's not this one, is it? Because it's
not this one.
It's not this one, is it?
again.
Because I know all it's going to be is like, someone bring your loaf of bread to the front, or whatever it is, and then we're going to sing Cauliflowers Are Fluffy.
Yeah.
You know that one? Do you ever sing that? Have you sung that?
I'd love to hear you sing it.
I will. Can you give me an A? You must know the one that's like cauliflowers fluffy and cabbages green. Da, 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 da. I don't know more words than that. Da, 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 da. And it really is just an awful, awful time singing that song. But
I think, but so my older sister is an absolute, that's probably her favourite song of all times. If it had been made by the 90s boy band Five, it probably would be a favourite song of all time. But no, that one, it's a cheerful one, isn't it? It
That
brings
song, yeah, maybe, but I don't.
not for you.
Not- But I feel at least with the video, you've got that cheerfulness, but you're going a bit deeper than just like, hey, isn't it nice we've got a cabbage?
Yes.
Which
And we're looking
seems to be the level sometimes Harvest Festival
Yes.
gets to in church.
Yeah.
And then we can all go and have a jacket potato afterwards, maybe.
But there's something very contagious, to use that word, about joy, right? If someone's really cheerful and they
I just think,
they are really appreciative. Well, that's the thing.
What have you got to be happy about?
Certainly, yeah. There's a cultural difference. Yeah. Anyway, what came after Mr. Thankful in our year of review? Being
yes.
Christ-centered.
So this is not a video.
No.
No.
Well, that is a video, I think. I think that's a
Is it?
thumbnail for the video.
Yes, sorry. So that is a video from the intensive. So
Yeah.
this is kind of about the training, the new training opportunities at
Yes.
Speak Life that have started this
I
year.
thought that was just an image to cue us on to this topic. You see.
I know, but so we did we kind of reorganized our training here at Speak Life and decided that we would bite off quite a bit more than we could possibly chew,
As is our way.
as is our want. And so we said we're going to invite people down for the first week of the internship, and we are going to do a residential intensive training where people can meet the team, learn the craft, and catch the vision. I think that's all three. Is that right?
Nice.
Have I got
I
them
caught a
right?
cold from it too.
You caught the cold.
I caught the vision and the
You
cold.
should be thankful
caught
that's
the
only thing you
vision.
caught.
Yeah,
No.
but no, it was super cool because that was like my second week being here in England,
Yeah.
and I mean, actually, being here in the first place wasn't. I was pretty settled, like pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but the intensive was a next level of information. Highly suggest it.
Yeah.
Everyone was taking notes, so that's a good.
They
that's a
were.
good sign,
They-
except for me because I never take notes. But
And it wasn't just the interns, was it? There were people.
we had
from-
people, yeah,
who were here a
others.
few weeks ago as well, who were actually
because
on the
yes,
Speakeasy.
we decided we'll do 4 intensives, so 4 week-long residential training weeks. So we did one in September. We did one a couple of weeks ago, back in whenever it was, start of December, and then we've got another one in March, and then one in May.
Maybe.
I'm saying these words
We
with
don't know.
question marks at the end. I can't.
We don't know the
actually remember.
future. Who knows what will happen tomorrow?
Who knows? This is
Saying.
such a good
Just saying.
get out for
There
not
we go.
having a plan
Exactly.
for
We're not
anything.
planning
No,
too
there is a
much.
plan, and the dates are set, and we will, unless Christ tarries.
Yeah,
Well,
it is March and May.
March
Sorry,
and-
that was
March
very
and May.
delayed,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
March
yeah,
and
March and
May.
May.
Yeah.
And they were like they were here again, like we say, a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
Some of them were on the Speakeasy, weren't they? We had a
Yeah.
bit of a chat from those guys as well. And I was only actually here. I missed the first intensive, and I was only actually here for one day of the second one.
Yeah.
But the day I was here, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great fun. Really good bunch.
Yeah, and we had people coming in who've maybe taught or created various film projects in the past to come and help us to do that. But also that, I think that slide is supposed to also tee us up to talk about the Foundry Fridays. Foundry Unlocked.
Yeah, and I don't work on a Friday. I mean, I do work,
You
but
barely
not here.
work on a Monday.
It's very true. That's fair.
Yeah.
So, what happens on a Foundry Friday? Foundry Unlocked.
So in the mornings is when usually Glenn takes the lead on this, and we look at theology for life and mission. And so he I mean, it's just been fantastic to really dive deep into, what is a theologian? How do we do theology? What do we think about the relationship of, and it's pretty, there's no sort of certificate at the end of it. I mean, you could write it on your CV, and we very much appreciate it if you did. But people are getting really deep level teaching on systematic theology through those morning sessions, and then off the back of that, we've then moved forward into talking about various passages of scripture and and doing that in the mornings. And then the afternoons, I take the lead a bit more, and we look at stories to win the world. And so I kind of just use it as an excuse to talk about things that interest me, and stories that I want to share with people. So we've done that a little bit. And I got to talk about my new favorite subject,
which is
Rukenfigure. Yeah,
beg your pardon.
Rukenfigure. That's right, Paul. I said Rukenfigure.
I thought that's what you said.
And it's basically just German for figure shown from the back.
Oh, I heard about this. Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard about your.
So I like to sort of show a bunch of paintings from various points in history and say, look how it changes your perspective having a figure shown from the back, and then what does that mean, and how do we use it in photography or videography or cinematography if we're really fancy. And yeah, so we get to explore some of those things, compositional elements. We looked at camera movement, Max. What else have we looked at? Editing selections.
Yeah, we've looked at camera movement, aspect ratios. Did some short film breakdowns of some fun short films, and got a couple shorts directors to speak. Some in person, one person over Zoom, unfortunately. But
it's been fun.
Breakdown stuff that works well.
Eucatastrophe, attention economy, all sorts of phrases that make very little sense on their own. But if you were there, it triggers there's a whole flood of information and warm feeling.
I thought when you just said eucatastrophe, I thought you were being rude.
No,
to me,
I wasn't. I promise.
That's okay.
Or was I? Not sure. So we've looked at, where have we got to? We must be at
got to be the last one.
November or
Please
something.
let it be the last one.
Yep. Hey!
Here we are.
Christmas.
The Christ Mouse. The Christ Mouse. Did we come to a consensus as to
Can we call it its original name?
Its working title was
Die Christmaus.
Die Christmaus, I think is the correct German pronunciation. We thought it was going to be a German film, and we sort of made it in that way, but then we sort of backed off from that because we thought it might confuse people even more than the current version does. So this is another
one of your brainchilds, yeah?
Brainchilds, yeah. I wrote and directed it. Yes, I'll take responsibility for it. To be honest, I've been thinking about it quite a bit. I think a better title might be The Widow and the Christmas Guest, or something like that, or The Widow and the Mouse.
Okay.
I wonder whether we slightly sent people in a funny direction. We set them up for expectations. I don't know, but everything's iterative. That's been the word of the year for me. It's just that we work on something and then we think, okay, what was great about that? How will we improve that? How do we keep developing better resources for Christians and for the church to use?
And so it starts as one thing and then develops, and you go, actually, this is the next iteration, and that might not be the final iteration, but it keeps developing.
And I think that's in one sense got to be the case, rather than thinking that we've nailed it. We've always succeeded in everything we've wanted to do. I'm not sure. I've been part of many projects where I've thought that was it. It was done. It was perfect. It could not be improved. You always get to the end of that in the creative process and think, oh, if we'd had time again, or if we'd had this.
I think though that's when you're the people in the creative process and who do that. There's always a sense of. But I think others looking in wouldn't look at it and go, "Oh, I wish they'd done this instead." I think, and actually, the response to it has been very, very positive, actually. And I think particularly it's just the kind of is it a kind of bait and switch where it just suddenly flips the narrative round. When she gets the card.
In fact, here it is.
Cards. Thanks, Glenn. Glenn's been holding that the whole time.
Yeah,
the Glenn tree.
And look at that. So
more props.
Can we get in on that? Go on then.
Can we see these?
The little gift.
If you're on the podcast, we've got the little card and a little present from the...
Not just a little card.
Sorry, the little card, I should say.
Chris Mouse. And it's there. You can't really see that.
Can't really see. But it says, thanks for all the cheese.
And there was a very fun little chat that I had with Thomas about... the director's commentary video you can also check out. Are you a cheese boy? That's my question to you.
Oh, I'm not actually.
You're
I
not
like
a cheese
lasagna and pizza, but I wouldn't have a cheese board or
What?
something. Yeah, so
Interesting.
I wouldn't say I am a cheese boy.
Huh. I thought we could be cheese boys together, but never mind. Never mind.
Last but not least, we have. I feel like the guy on Strictly Come Dancing, Anton Dubek.
Is that good?
But yeah,
Do you?
no.
I'm not actually.
the voice from off camera. You know.
Okay.
Sorry, it was a.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Jeopardy has
Trebek.
Yeah,
have-
that's.
Anton Dubek.
No
Yeah.
one in the UK knows what Jeopardy is,
Really?
really.
Oh,
It's an American long-running quiz show in which you give the answer and then the contestant has to come up
but
with a
you
question.
can't just say the answer. You have to say what is
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or
But
the
yeah.
answer, not just blank. Blank could be the answer.
But these are two different people, I think we're saying. There's someone called Anton Dubek,
Yeah, that's what
Just to
I'm
be
saying.
clear.
Alex
who is
Trebek
a
and
judge
Anton
on Strictly Come Dancing.
Correct.
And there is Alex
Trebek.
Trebek, who
Or Alex.
was the host of
Yes,
Jeopardy.
the late Alex.
The
Trebek.
late
I was
Alex.
going to say,
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
he's passed.
But,
yeah.
but Jeopardy's not a dance show.
No,
So
that's
it's
very
not that
different.
impressive.
In fact,
Not really related at all.
I mean, they're both television programs.
Yeah.
This is true. But
And
let's-
how this pertains to the Christmas video in Rome is
Matt
right,
dragging
yes,
us back
this is
onto-
what. Thank you,
on track
Max.
here.
We are here the night before Christmas. What's that about?
Can I be honest? I haven't had a chance to watch this one yet. I've not seen it. It's been released this week, and I've not even seen it.
It's only like 4 or 5 minutes. How long is it? 5 minutes?
About 5 minutes.
Couldn't
Yeah.
find that time.
I mean,
to watch.
I'm a very busy man.
No,
You know?
yeah.
But this was filmed in Rome. Though.
Shall I
This is
tell
actually,
them what it's about then?
I know all I know so
Okay.
far is it's filmed in Rome.
Yeah.
And so
Correct.
it was a 2-man crew who went over to do this.
Yeah.
And it's a spoken word piece.
Yeah.
I believe that's going to tee up something Glenn might be doing in the future.
Yes.
And it might not be suitable for children.
These are all correct.
This is what I've seen on Facebook so far.
These are all correct. So you've been scrolling through
I've been
the
reading the
reactions.
information about it,
Okay.
man.
But so yes, so the night before Christmas it's a line taken from the poem of the same name, but Glenn is looking basically at the history of the Western world prior to the Jesus Revolution.
Yep.
And to talk about particularly Rome is a great example, worked example of the brutality and the massive abuse of power that was right there and at the heart of the founding of Rome, and the way in which then Christians were brutalized and massacred for public entertainment within that. But then in the course of history, as that gospel of Jesus took root, the change that brought about in terms of not only Rome itself, but also the rest of the Western world.
So much so that we would just take those things for granted now. So a lot of this, in my understanding, is grown out of some of the initial conversations. I think we may be part of the Reset series with Tom Holland, as in historian Tom Holland, not Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And his book Dominion, which is
Yeah.
very much about those issues of how he himself had been looking into Rome and was very shocked by Rome and realized it was an alien culture. And what was it that had changed that?
Yeah.
And actually, as he delved into it, he discovered it is Christianity. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
And so he himself wrote this, excellent, but quite chunky book,
Yeah.
Dominion. And so Glenn, I believe the project coming up in the future is that Glenn himself is writing a kind of, I remember having this discussion with someone else. I said Glenn is writing a layman's version, to which
Right.
someone told me, Tom Holland apparently is the layman's version.
Oh.
So this is like the layman's version for people like me who can't cope with big books. So.
Right.
So Glenn is writing a book, which I think
Who wrote the proper version?
the proper
Do we
version.
know who that
So yeah,
is?
if Tom Holland is the
Okay.
layman's version, what's the
Yeah.
proper one? Answers on a postcard.
Sure.
So this book, I think it's coming out sometime this year, but very much picks up on
next year. It's coming out in 2022.
22. Yeah, not this year, next year.
Yeah. Just to say, by the way, last year was 2020, and next year is 2022.
That is correct.
No, but last year, do you get it? Last year was 2020, and next year
Oh, I see.
is
It's
2022.
2022 also.
We spent about 15 minutes. I spent 15 minutes telling that joke on Friday, and eventually we got it.
Got there. I'm
Yeah.
glad I got there a bit quicker.
But anyway,
there's
go
a
back
book.
to it. Glenn's got a book coming out in the summer of next year.
Yep.
And it is called...
Is it tentatively titled
The Air We
The
Breathe.
Air We Breathe? Which
During a pandemic,
is
is
not-
that the best? But it's basically just saying
Not a holly
that
song.
these are the cultural assumptions that we have, and if we investigate those, we find that actually they only really make sense
yeah,
based upon a Christian worldview.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when I was having a conversation with Glenn about being in the hospital, and I said it really struck me. Why are these nurses doing what they do? Why do you help the most sick and vulnerable in society? These nurses, the large majority, are not Christians, but what they're doing is profoundly Christian because they are caring for the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? And we just
Yeah.
take it for granted. Well, of course you help the
Yeah.
sick and the vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, you must have an NHS that helps
Yeah.
people and anybody.
Yeah.
But that's because we're so saturated by
Yeah.
the Christian worldview.
Yeah.
We don't even realize how Christian that is, and hence, you know, why Glenn is able to say, look at what the Roman world was like before
Yeah.
Christianity, or look at what the world was like, and you see the stark contrast. So I think that's going to be an exciting thing. And I guess around
Yeah.
the book, I imagine there'll probably be some more
And if
content
you,
as well.
you can get hold of the sort of free chapter, which is called, I think, the Night Before Christmas, from that book is available if you go and follow the links through from that video.
Great.
But yes, as you mentioned before, there are reasonably vivid descriptions of the brutal life of Rome.
Yeah.
So
I did see someone say that they'd seen it posted and they were like, brilliant, I can use this in the all age on Sunday. And then they went, no, I can't use that now.
No, probably not. Yeah. But certainly something for us to think about. But what's coming up in the next 5 days, we don't know.
No
What's
one knows.
coming up? What's going to be allowed? What's your result going to say when you stick something up your nose and down the back of your throat? We're not sure.
No.
But I think as we've looked back over this last year, it's exciting to see the things that we prepared for and could reasonably say, oh, that'll happen. You know, Father's Day, you know, will be on this particular day, and Valentine's Day will be this particular day, and, you know, there'll be a harvest to come. But then also so much that that couldn't have been prepared for, or that just we needed to respond to in some way.
Yeah, of course.
And that in a way we're just very grateful for the fact that, you know, though neither of us were particularly involved throughout the first half of the year, we're both back here. We've taken over this speakeasy now.
Yep.
And Glenn will forever be represented now by a different type of tree.
Yeah, each
I
week,
think.
yeah, I
Each
think
week.
so.
But yeah, just seeing how God's worked through various things in ways that, you know, maybe we feel have resolved and we're at peace with, or maybe are still unresolved and we still need to trust him with. But that's a significant part of what it is to walk with Christ and to be part of his church and to do that together.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting us do that with you. And we basically want to say thank you very much for joining us, not only this evening, but through 2021. And we wish you a very Merry Christmas, and we hope you have a very happy New Year. So thank you very much from me, Nate Morgan Locke, and
Thank you very much from me, Paul Feesey.
good night.